Hi, I'm Fred, head coach at Usuli. Welcome to the Epic Endurance podcast, where we take a deep dive into remarkable stories about endurance, strength, and transformation. Today we're going back to the Breaking 90 series, where I'm attempting to break 90 minutes on a half marathon, and I hope this series brings some insights on concept about training. Today's episode is focusing on volume. Volume is usually defined as the workload done over a certain period. There are fundamental misconceptions about training volume and issues that arise from them. Some athletes choose to look mostly and only at mileage, especially when emulating professionals. This often leads to overreaching, as first, they're not able to handle the sheer amount of work that is required, and they don't have the ability to access certain facilities and professionals that might help in recovery, such as therapists around, for their body to fully absorb the amount of training they're doing. Number two is that athletes that do trying to aim for these distances spend much longer duration than professionals for the same distances. A 10K for a pro is much shorter than a 10K for a novice runner. Paces differ, therefore, the amount of time spent at relative intensity, the intensity that they feel, is different. Therefore, the chance of getting injured when spending more time at higher intensity increases. A better approach is to consider training time when looking at volume. That doesn't mean that distance mileage should be fully disregarded, but when reflecting stress imposed on the body, it's a better approach to look at time. Misconception number two is that you can get away without any volume. We live in an area where people trying to be extremely efficient. We are aiming to jam our days minutes per minute and do 20 things at the same time. And many coaches and programs offer solutions like getting in shape in 3 hours per week. 3 hours per week is well within the guidelines, recommended guidelines by the CDA in terms of aerobic training. However, it is important to acknowledge that adaptation occurs under two variables. The volume determines the rate of adaptation, and the intensity determines the kind of adaptation the body is subject to. Therefore, reducing volume drastically reduces the speed at which the body adapts, and potentially as well the final drops of adaptation that could further increase performance. So, too much volume or too much mileage leads to overreaching. Too little volume might lead to undertraining and not achieving performance, or to a skewed distribution of intensities where athletes do too much work too hard and not enough easy work. Which leads to my third point, is neglecting the easy runs. Easy training is paramount to running faster. Aerobic sports are built on aerobic foundation, and without doing easy work, the harder work doesn't work as well. People talk about the 80-20 rule. The vast majority of the work should be done very easily. It is important to understand that the risk of injury at higher intensity is magnified, and the reward are not necessarily worth the penalty. Better do a lot of easy work and still integrate some harder work without overreaching. In our specific case of me running a half marathon in sub 90, I have to consider first what was my training mileage, my training volume, and how to quantify all of that. If I look at my yearly training, I've averaged about, in 2024, 117 kilometers per month, which is not fantastic. But I'm a triathlete and I've been pretty busy. Anyway, I have no excuses, not very, very high, more than some, much lower than many. My lower month were at around 83K, and I think my highest month this year was around 208K in May, so pretty far behind. If I consider, and it's a bit more important, the recent trends, which will be September, October, and November, now that we're in December, I had done 140K in September with 16 hours and 50 minutes. In October, 101 kilometer with 11 and 9 minutes. And in November, 144K with 15 hours and 13 minutes. Now, this is the time I spent and the mileage spent each month, which is good. but that does not fully give us how much work I've done. A way that coaches or platforms often look at training volume is assigning a score, which is a product of intensity spent at time, where an hour spent on a easier run gives less point, and an hour spent on a harder run gives more point. Therefore, we can normalize training volume and have a score and maybe assess also fitness. If I look at my past months in that way, September was scored at 889, October 743, and November 1025. So even I spent a little less time in November, my score was a little higher, showcasing that my running intensity was slightly higher. I think in terms of goal and training volume, and by volume I mean both this training score as well as the time I'm spending on my legs. I still want to make sure that I am allocating the vast majority of my time spent on easy work, but these numbers need to be increased to maximize both performance during the event and my ability to avoid slowing down at higher intensities. Another metric that is interesting for coaches and athletes is using a weighted rolling average of this score to infer what will be metabolic fitness, which is a good indication of the ability to sustain effort. It is not perfect, but it's a metric, and like every metric and every tool, it's flawed, but it does work for certain things. And I would assume my current running score to be around 30, where I would like it to be above 50. So there is some work to be done. And this number will only increase if my overall volume, which will be work done at time and intensity, increases either week by week or month by month, but there needs to be an increase to maximize my potential to perform well during this little challenge. So this is where I am at, and if you have any question about that works, then feel free to contact me.